You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show. everyone, to Conservative Commando's radio show. This is Sharon Engel, and I'm on with my co-host, the one and only Anna Little. We're coming to you live from downtown Philadelphia, WNJC 1360, our flagship station, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM FM 24/7. Those are all .coms. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. And 11 a.m., you can log on to Red Nation Rising Radio, or midnight, you can log on to redstatetalkradio.com. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. And I know that works because when I was in Palo Alto at Stanford with my grandson, Ben, and I know you've all been following and praying. Thank you so much for following our family and keeping us in your prayers. But while we were down there, we met a driver for the Ronald McDonald House. I have to give a shout-out to Tufa, who is listening to Conservative Commandos out every day on his phone from Palo Alto. So we know that, like Rick Trader says, we are everywhere. We are everywhere. Anna Little, it's so great to be on with you on this fabulous Friday. Tell me what's on your mind, and then I'll tell you what's on mine.
Well, I'll tell you, Sharon, I have been watching very closely what is going on in Washington, D.C., and I have to just make a few comments about the dynamics between different members of the Republican Party in the Congress. Because, you know, as a conservative, I remember how this president got elected. And it wasn't through the mainstream Republican Party, Sharon. It was conservatives out there in the grassroots of this country that elected this president. And some of the disenfranchised Democrats that are done with establishment leadership on that side, they crossed over. So this Donald Trump, this president that we have, did not come up through mainstream Republicans. So the fact that the Tuesday Group liberals and the Republican Main Street Partnership liberals may at this moment outnumber the Liberty Caucus does not mean they are in charge, because remember who's in charge. It's we the people who are in charge. Those of us, the voters, the hardworking Americans that put that president where he is. And I believe strongly, as I believe you might too, Sharon, that we the people are more aligned with that Liberty Caucus than we are with Tuesday Group liberals, well, okay, moderates, but liberal Republicans, and Main Street Partnership Republicans who are also liberal or moderate, if you want to use that term. And so I think we really need to stand up as we the people, and we need to clarify this not only for the media, but for ourselves and for the president, who I think has been misled by some people he may be conferencing with. What are your thoughts?
Oh, you know, Anna, the reason that I am running for Congress from my state of Nevada is because of this very issue. We, the people, need representation, and right now in Nevada, we don't have the representation that we need back there to help our president do what he needs to do. And it's obvious by this last, I don't know, it was a comedy of errors, perhaps. I don't know what we want to call this Obamacare vote. But certainly they tried to run through, just like Daniel Horowitz at Conservative Review said they would, an Obamacare light on us. They tried to say not repeal or replace, but repair, or actually just give us some of the same old watered-down stuff that the Democrats gave us. And the Liberty Caucus, as you pointed out, stood up very, very early on and said, this is a rotten bill. We can't support it. It's just not the right thing to do. The people said, and it's a mandate, Anna, that election share showed everyone in Washington, D.C. that the people want the repeal of Obamacare. And they said, this is a mandate. We have to do better. And so they went, they conferenced with President Trump, they conferenced with Speaker Ryan. They came out and said, okay, if this is the best we can get, let's get something on the table, because we know our president is the man who knows the art of the deal. and he's promised that he can get us something better. Just take off the mandates. Just take off the mandates, the things that are causing us so much problem. And so that was the bill that was supposed to go through, was the one without the mandates, but still it was a rotten bill. And lo and behold, the liberal Republicans joined with the Democrats and said, no way, we're voting no. We're voting no. And Ryan could not then get the numbers that he needed to pass the rotten bill. So now they have to go back to the table. I think they will be back with another bill, and I think it's because the Liberty Caucus is pushing it. They're saying, come on, you promised. The president is pushing it. I promised, he said, that we would repeal Obamacare. And so I think we're going to see a new bill coming out of the Congress that is truly a repeal bill, something that will be more closely aligned to what the people have asked for. And it's not a bad thing that this rotten bill was defeated before it even got started, because we knew it was rotten from the beginning. Like I said, Daniel Horowitz at Conservative Review, one of our friends that we often have here on Conservative Commando, he called it, and it happened just the way that he said it would. So I think we're just seeing what the real climate is there. And if you have one of these Republicans who could vote no, this was a scary vote, Anna, because if they voted no, you couldn't tell what side they were on. Either they were a liberal not wanting to repeal Obamacare at all, or they were a conservative saying this is a rotten bill. So it's just hard to tell where these guys stand. But we know that Liberty Caucus, only 36 members strong, but they're mighty. They're able to push the ball down the field, and we should be giving them loud applause and electing others just like them to go to Washington, D.C.
Well, that is the key, Sharon, that last part that you said, electing others like them to go to Washington, D.C., because, you know, there's been a threat, a veiled threat, maybe a direct threat. You can judge that there will be consequences in 2018, and you bet your bottom dollar there ought to be. In every election there are consequences, because we the people know that in order to direct our government, we have to be vigilant, and we have to communicate with our representatives, and the consequences ought to be that those who do not carry the people's voice, or who are serving agendas that are not in line with we the people, ought to be replaced. And that's exactly what we should be looking at in 2018. Not this year, but next year, which will come. It'll be here sooner than we think. So I think it's important for us to look at what the members of the Liberty Caucus did. They stood hardline on their principles. When it came time to sit down and conference about the bill, they did the right thing. They sat in with the president. They voiced their principles. When the president asked them for concessions, they made a deal with the president. It is the Tuesday group, your liberals, in the Republican Party, and the Main Street Partnership, your liberals in the Republican Party, that took their toys and went home, and instead of working for the agenda of we the people, they worked for their own political agenda, and they tried to flex political muscle against the Liberty Caucus, who were just trying to represent we the people. We need to make sure that we reward those who represent we the people and increase them in number if we truly want this government to follow the direction of the people who are supposed to direct it, and the people who this government is supposed to serve.
Well, I know you and I took a little pledge that we would start submitting articles to Conservative Commando's radio show to be posted on our website. And I did just that with an article about Obamacare, and I know you did just that with one on the issue of life, the value of life in our country. And in that article, I stated just exactly what you said, and it happened in Nevada in 2014. We turned over both houses and the governor to red. We said we've had enough of this blue state stuff, and we're going to go with people who are telling us they're conservative. Well, saying it and doing it are two different things, which we found out in 2015. And that legislative session, we got the largest tax increase in the history of the state. It was an income tax on our businesses, a margins tax that's a gross receipts tax, that making it so you can't even make any deductions before you pay your tax. And not only that, but it was our Republican legislature and our governor that passed that bill. So is it any wonder that in 2016, when election time came around, the people of Nevada said, you didn't do what you promised, and now we have a blue state. Our legislature turned completely blue, and it is dismal down there. I was down there last week, and it's difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, they're reviving things that we never wanted to see the light of day again, but we're having to fight hard from that minority position now, and it's all because people don't keep their promises. So it's not a veiled threat. It is a promise. You don't keep your promises, and we'll promise to get someone else who will. That's not a threat. That's just the way it works.
And with that, I think, Sharon, I am going to take us to our first break because time flies when we're having fun. And that will then, when we return, hopefully we'll talk a little bit about the guests that we're going to have on the show. And then we'll talk about how you are going to be the leader, I think, out there in Nevada in getting things back on track for the people of Nevada. And I can't wait to see you do that. But going to break now, we are coming to you live, listeners, from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .com. I'm Anna Little, co-hosting today with the one and only Sharon Engel, and we'll be right back with you after this break.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the Internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamb-Menier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Menier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We, the people, never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRshow.com, or at 11 a.m., Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, RedStateTalkRadio.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. I'm co-hosting today with the one and only Sharon Engel. Sharon, do you think we ought to go over our guests so that our listeners know what's coming on the show?
I think so, and we have some great guests. Today at 3:35, we have Frank Vernuccio, who serves as editor-in-chief of the New York Analysis of Policy and Government, providing objective coverage of key issues facing the United States today. And Frank is the co-host of the Vernuccio-Novak Report, nationally heard each Thursday at 10 a.m., both on broadcast radio and the web at amfm247.com, and on Saturdays at 1 p.m. as part of the CCRN here at WNJC, and also co-hosts the American Political Zone, and that's broadcast on cable in eastern Connecticut. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attack, Frank Vernuccio was appointed to New York's Governor George Pataki to lead the hard-hit New York County Workers' Compensation Board. And Frank's going to be talking to us about anti-ballistic missile defenses. I don't think we've even talked about this on this show very often, Anna, and Frank's going to be here to kind of catch us up to date on what's going on in North Korea, in Russia, in the Eastern nations bloc, Eastern European nations bloc, and just what the aftermath of Obama has been as far as our strategic defense. So it'll be interesting to hear from Frank on that, and I've got lots of questions. I know you do too. And then at 4:05, we've got Rachel DeVord, who is going to talk to us about Rachel Boulevard, who is the Director of Policy Services for the Heritage Foundation. And in this role, she works to provide members of Congress with the think tank's policy recommendations, in-depth analyses, and latest conservative solutions. And before joining Heritage, Boulevard was Policy Director for the Senate Steering Committee, a caucus of conservative senators under the successive chairmanships of Pat Toomey and Senator Mike Lee. And she is also going to be on our show today to talk about the debt limit, calls for Congress, Trump to fix the budget. So here we go, the debt limit. Anna, I was just shocked. We're at $19.9 trillion in debt. This is what went on during Obama. And we're coming up on that time when the Congress had to make a decision. And we'll see how Rachel Boulevard sees it, what decision they really should make. And I'm really interested in talking to her about the debt. My goodness, $19.9 trillion. I can't believe it, Anna. Who do you have at 4:35?
Well, at 4:35, I have Colin Hanna. Now, he's the president of Let Freedom Ring USA, Inc. He's a former county commissioner in Chester County, PA, and he's been a guest on Hannity and Colmes, The Situation with Tucker Carlson, Dayside, Fox and Friends, Your World with Neil Cavuto, The Big Story with John Gibson, and Special Report with Britt Hume and the Lou Dobbs Report. He's coming on the show to talk to us about how China has been stonewalling U.S. Steel's cyber theft lawsuit. Now, this is important to, obviously, U.S. Steel, but to all of us, because the cyber theft or cyber illegal hacking is actually a very, very front and center topic on the world stage. I mean, it's I guess your information just isn't secure and safe. And when it comes to business, that's really important. I mean, there are trade secrets and all kinds of strategies that go on to building a successful business. And in order for there to be free trade in an open market within a country and even internationally in a global sense, we have to preserve that ability to compete fairly one with another. And China is the one that breaks the rules. Every time you look up, they are breaking the rules one way or another, and there just don't seem to be any consequences. Well, in this particular case, Colin Hanna from Let Freedom Ring USA, Inc. is going to talk to us about how China is stonewalling U.S. Steel's cyber theft lawsuit, and I think we can learn from him about some of the dynamics involved, and then we can start to talk about what we want our representatives to do with regard to policy.
Well, it certainly is a timely topic, as they all are. Our guests are really right on time, just the way we need them to be here at Conservative Commando's radio show. And, you know, I have a brother who has an international company. He deals with China all the time, and he said, you cannot trust the Chinese with your secrets. And for that reason, he holds some patents that he said, you know, we have laws to protect our things here in the United States from our own citizens, but in the international world, our laws really have very little sway, and so you have to protect yourself. And they're very good at getting into our stuff and taking what we have used our good minds and our resources to develop. And so we really do need to have business at least savvy about how they can protect themselves. But you're right, and I know that Colin Hanna is going to talk about this, how we need to have government step up to the plate and really at least stand behind our citizens when it comes to this kind of thievery.
Absolutely, yeah. Criminal behavior can't be tolerated, not domestically and not internationally, and that's what I think we're looking at least with the topic that Colin Hanna's come on to discuss, but in other areas as well with China. I mean, the threat, the cyber hacking, cyber theft threat from China has been pretty much a clear and present danger, I think. And, you know, we've got to take a look at what we can do policy-wise to, I guess, combat it, if not criminalize it. So we'll have to take a look at what we can do. And so back to Nevada, Sharon, you were touching on some very important issues, and while they are local to you in Nevada, they are also common thread issues across this country. And so in the few minutes we have left, I'd love to hear you talk about how your run for Congress can open the opportunity for Nevadans to take back their government, because obviously in this last go-around, this last presidential election, there's been an awful lot of big party, big government influence, which has changed the dynamics in Nevada, and your congressional race may be an opportunity. So tell us about it.
Well, I think that the biggest opportunity in a congressional race is that people can see who is carrying the banner and can come alongside of them. We've talked about some of the things that you've done in New Jersey, even, Anna, where you get a little army of folks that agree with you on the issues. And, you know, a few people can make a lot of things happen if they're willing to stand up and just voice their opinions. And so that's kind of what a congressional race can do when they see that banner being lifted up. If they will just come and rally around that person, they can make deep changes in the government and how it's working, especially right now when most of the legislators are in session around the nation. If you're willing, just look for that person that agrees with you, get behind them and ask them, how can we help? You know, how can we add our voice to your voice? And that's really what we've been asking all along. And I think in our first segment when we talked about the Liberty Caucus, they are a small group, but they speak with a loud voice because they're unified in that voice. They don't waver on their principles, and they know where they're going, and they really do pursue that principle with vigor. So that's what I can do here as a congressional candidate in the state of Nevada, is rally that kind of support for the things that we need, not only in Nevada but also nationally.
And listeners, remember, you can join in that effort, because while you may not be able to vote for Sharon if you don't live in her district in Nevada, she can vote for you when she gets to D.C. So please join, get on board, help her take the voice of we the people to Congress. But at this point, Sharon, believe it or not, we are up against another break, and I'm going to take us to it. Listeners, we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .coms. I'm Anna Little, co-hosting with Sharon Engel, and John Forsyth is keeping us on time on the boards, and we'll be right back after this break with our first guest.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Sharon Engel. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our websites, CCRS Network and ccrshow.com, or at 11 a.m., Station Rising Radio, or at midnight, RedStateTalkRadio.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Sharon, our next guest is ready. Would you do the introduction, please?
It would be my pleasure and honor to introduce our friend Frank Vernuccio, who serves as the editor-in-chief of the New York Analysis of Policy and Government, providing objective coverage of key issues facing the United States today. Frank was appointed by New York's Governor George Pataki to lead the hard-hit New York County Workers' Compensation Board. And Frank, welcome to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Oh, Sharon, Anna, it's great to be with you both.
Frank, we're pleased to have you here to talk with us about the U.S. anti-missile defenses. Too little, too late. I want you to catch us up. First of all, we know that this is an issue that isn't a new one. 34 years ago, Reagan was talking about SDI, and the liberals poo-pooed it and said, oh, Star Wars. So talk to us from that perspective and catch us up to date with what's going on now.
Well, it was a pretty spectacular opening move by President Ronald Reagan 34 years ago. A lot of historians looking at the crash of the Soviet Union believe that the potential impact of SDI, as it was known more properly, Strategic Defense Initiative, convinced the Soviet leadership that they could never catch up to the United States in terms of military technology, and they began to question their entire power structure. Now, of course, SDI was never built. It was replaced eventually by something called Brilliant Pebbles, which was a lot cheaper version of SDI. That was squashed by President Clinton. We flash forward to the next century, the 21st century, and we saw that first Senator Barack Obama talked about taking more money from the ABM program than had actually been allocated to it in the first place. And, of course, when Senator Obama became President Obama, he did everything he could to kill the ABM program. You will recall, of course, that one of the first things he did was to cancel our agreement with Eastern European countries to mount an SDI, an ABM program in Poland. When he met with then Russian President Medvedev in South Korea, he was caught on an open mic saying to Medvedev, I can be more flexible, basically, in eliminating SDI or ABM as soon as I'm reelected. So he had a consistent record of being against any kind of missile defense for the United States, which puts us in the position where we are right now. A third-rate power like North Korea, which has a burgeoning nuclear program, now is capable of threatening and perhaps even blackmailing the United States because we don't really have a significant ABM program. We do have elements of it. We have the terminal high-altitude defense system, which we've deployed in South Korea. We have ships with the Aegis anti-ballistic missile program, but there are too few, and of course it's too big a world for what we have to really effectively protect the United States. So at the moment, American forces in South Korea, Japan, and Guam, possibly even in Hawaii, are immediately in peril from a North Korean attack, as well as potentially within a relatively brief amount of time, the American mainland itself.
You know, that was what was interesting about your article, because I think we think we are on another continent. They can't get to us. We've got two big oceans on both sides of us. How did they get this far? But it was amazing to me. In your article, you pointed out that North Korea could get to Hawaii. Talk a little bit about that. And they do seem to be kind of beating the war drums, don't they?
Well, of course, North Korea seems to think that they can get what they want by beating the war drums. If we go back to the 1990s, North Korea was advancing in its nuclear program, and President Clinton deigned to give them a couple of $1 billion in order for them to refrain from going ahead with its nuclear program. Didn't work, did it? And doesn't it sound incredibly familiar? Isn't that very similar to what we did with Iran right here in the 21st century, thanks to President Obama? Didn't work then. I don't think it's going to work right now. North Korea has increasingly launched sophisticated missiles. It launched 4 of them earlier this year at the same time, which pretty much gives warning to the rest of the world that it's not just one missile we would have to contend with at a time. It could be a whole bevy of them. And as we've seen North Korea put sophisticated satellites in orbit, it means they have the capability to hit vastly different parts of the world, including Hawaii and potentially the mainland of the United States.
It really drew me up short when I read your article, Frank, about how vulnerable we really are and how truly defending we are as far as these missiles go. You know, we hear about it all the time going on in Israel, how they're flying these Scud missiles in from the Gaza Strip and from the Golan Heights and Syria, and we think, well, those are close places, but we're not talking about close proximity here. We're talking about really far away places in the world being able to strike us in the homeland. So it's really amazing to me how vulnerable we are. You also talked a little bit about the trust issues that Obama had caused with these Eastern European nations. He made this proclamation on a really important date that just really threw everything into a tailspin, didn't he?
Well, he did. He basically betrayed our agreement with Poland on the anniversary of the date that Poland was invaded by the Soviet Union. That raised warning bells in Warsaw like nothing we've ever seen. And, Sharon and Anna, it's kind of remarkable. President Trump has said that all he wants the European partners of NATO to do is to spend an adequate amount of money, as they are legally obligated to do, on their defense. Somehow or other, the major media has warped that into saying that President Trump doesn't like NATO. On the other hand, when President Obama really betrayed NATO, and particularly did it on a date with so much historical significance, the press said relatively nothing at all about it. Talk about a biased media.
Talk about a biased media. Well, we have to go to a short break, Frank. Can you stay with us through the break? Because I know Anna has a lot of questions for you as well.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Well, it's our pleasure, Frank, always to have you, and we really appreciate your time, and thank you for spending it with us here at Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .com. We'll be right back after this brief message with Sharon Engel, yours truly, and Anna Little, the one and only, and our special guest, Frank Vernuccio, talking about inner... Well, let's see. We're talking about Star Wars. How about that? We'll be right back.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the Internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We, the people, never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Sharon Engel. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and ccrshow.com, or at 11 a.m., Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, redstatetalkradio.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We have been speaking this segment with Frank Vernuccio of the Vernuccio-Novak Report. And Frank, I just wanted to let you know I've been listening to your segment with Sharon. I'm very interested in what's going on with the U.S. anti-missile defense situation. I've got a quick question for you. We are obviously aware of this growing threat. And what, if anything, can we do in the short term to defend Hawaii or any other reachable part of the United States against such an attack when we've got that crazy little fella up in Korea giving us a tough time? What can we do?
Well, fortunately, we've had a lot of success with the test we've had of the existing systems that were developed. It's not so much a question of developing a whole new system as in deploying the system we have now in a much greater number and much greater locations. We originally were going to locate some of our interceptors on the East Coast. We decided, or rather the Obama administration actually decided not to do that. We simply need to deploy more Aegis systems, more THAAD systems as they're known, in more places around the world. You know, the Aegis system, which is on naval ships, we could deploy those, we could build and deploy those. That would be an existing thing that we could do right now, as well as future development. We have to look also at space-based systems as well. We know that China, for example, has been effective in anti-satellite weaponry, which could blind us in case they wanted to do a nuclear attack. We have to harden all the systems we have first to give us an early warning, to ensure that warning exists, and we have to build up more of the facilities we do have right now. There is an illusion, I think, that most Americans have, that somehow or other there's this 24-hour, 360-degree protective belt around the United States, you know, from Hawaii to New York, and it really doesn't exist. I live in New York City, and I recall in the aftermath of the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, my cousin, who was a deputy commissioner of police at the time, was with Mayor Giuliani. And the mayor turned to the deputy commissioner and said, "Get some air cover for New York City." And the deputy commissioner said, "Okay, Mr. Mayor." He paused for a second and said, "How the heck do I do that?" You know, the illusion that somehow or other there's a protective system of anti-missiles and airplanes protecting the coast of the United States, it is just that, an illusion. It's not there. Our defense budget is inadequate. It was made far worse under the Obama administration. We've got to get back to really protecting the United States.
So now you've touched on the question, which is, what do we do in the long term? We've got to establish policy that leaves us with, shall we say, a turnkey response available when these threats become imminent, as I believe they are now. I mean, with all the testing that's going up in Korea, I'm seeing it as an imminent threat. And obviously, we, in the short term, have got to focus preparations on where the greatest threat is, and I believe that's Korea. But in the long term, we need policy to protect ourselves from all of our enemies. Look, technology is improving, which means they can get to us in ways that they haven't been able to before, and they can do it more effectively, even with old-time weapons. So tell us, policy-wise, what shall we do?
Well, there's one thing we also have to keep in mind, which is really, really important. It no longer would take a total of, hundreds of missiles to devastate the United States. The latest work on things like electromagnetic pulse attacks indicate that a single nuclear weapon detonated at the right place over the continental United States can eliminate all electrical plants throughout the whole country. The estimates of that, since we would not be able to move food or water or medical supplies, no transportation would survive, since all of our cars and trucks and trains and planes are all computerized, that would be affected by an EMP. The latest estimates say that about 80% of the American population would starve or die of thirst or lack of medical care within 6 to 8 months of a single nuclear blast that caused an electromagnetic pulse. So we do have to understand how serious this threat is, and it's not going to be just Russia or China that could do it to us. It could be tomorrow, it could be North Korea, and a couple of years it could be Iran as well. We have to deploy the systems we have now and deploy them in significant numbers, and we have to keep advancing the technology, perhaps finally going back to the future in a way, going back to what President Reagan wanted to do 34 years ago, and build a space-based system that could intercept incoming missiles as they reach outer space and before they go back into the atmosphere. That would be by far the most effective way of doing it. The technology is there, we could build it, and if one worries about the expense of it, well, you have to ask, what would be the expense of just losing one American city? And if you want to stretch that even further, what's the expense of losing about 80% of the American population?
Yeah, the threat is imminent, and it is real. And I think that you make terrific suggestions. Now, we're at a time when we're talking about budgets and wanting to get, government reduced in the size. And there are even some conservatives out there, Frank, who would say that they don't want to see an increase in spending anywhere, not even with the military. Now, I think we have a president who has put forward a budget proposal that would increase spending, necessary spending with the military. What are your thoughts? What should we, the people, be doing to ensure that our defense is fully funded and able to be implemented as needed and immediately?
Well, during the period of the Obama administration when the sequester was in place, it basically said that all spending was the same, that we had to cut equally from defense as from a lot of other pork programs. Well, that's kind of like a family saying, we're going to cut spending right across the board, so we're not going to take that luxury vacation, and we're not going to pay the mortgage. Different expenses have different meanings, different importances. We could cut a lot of the pork spending to fund a lot of the military spending that we have to do. Now, the proposed budget that the president sent to Congress recently did authorize about $54 billion in increases to the defense budget, which probably is a little bit too little. But he also tried to pay for that by cutting out a lot of the pork, a lot of the fat from the rest of the federal budget. Look, the Constitution envisioned that the federal government would not get involved in things like education. That's something that the states and localities can do a lot more effectively. By pulling the federal government out of those areas, you're not against things like education. You're simply saying that the states could do this a lot more efficiently. And what only the federal government can actually do, provide for the common defense, as it's stated, that's what the government should be spending its federal tax dollars on.
Well, Frank Vernuccio, I want to thank you so much for your work and for taking the time to spend with us this afternoon on Conservative Commando's radio show. Remind our listeners where they can follow you and your work on this and other important issues.
Well, Sharon and Anna, it's great being with you. You can go to our website at usagovpolicy.com, and you can catch our work there. We have a new article every day, 6 days a week, and most importantly, of course, tune in to the Conservative Commandos radio station where you can catch our radio show, the Vernuccio Novak Report.
Thank you so much, listeners. This is a very important issue. U.S. anti-missile defenses, too little, too late, brought to us by Frank Vernuccio of the Vernuccio Novak Report. And with that, it is time for another break. We are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .com. I'm Anna Little, co-hosting today with Sharon Engel, Silent John Forsythe on the boards in the studio, keeping us broadcasting and on time. We'll be right back with our next guest after this break.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsythe, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, The Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos radio network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Sharon Engel. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or at 11 a.m., Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, RedStateTalkRadio.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Sharon, our next guest is with us, and the honor of the introduction is yours. Take it away.
And it is my pleasure to introduce Rachel Bovard, who's the Director of Policy Services for the Heritage Foundation. In this role, she works to provide members of Congress with the think tank policies, recommendations, in-depth analyses, and latest conservative solutions. She was named in 2013 the National Journal's list of the 25 most influential women in Washington under 35. What an honor. Rachel Bovard, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, Rachel, always. Now, we know you didn't write this article, Debt Limit Calls for Congress and Trump to Fix the Budget, but we want you to comment on this whole idea that we're coming up again on the debt limit suspension that's going to expire this coming month. What is going to happen this time, Rachel, that'll be different from last time? And talk to us a little bit about the debt.
Well, yeah, we are at $20 trillion. We've maxed out our credit card at $20 trillion, which is obviously the highest debt we've ever had. And the debt limit is going to have to be dealt with. We've officially hit the limit already, but doesn't have to be dealt with until March. And usually this is the type and time of year in Washington where you see a deal get cut to increase spending. Both sides, negotiate with each other, and there's usually a deal that's struck to increase spending, increase the debt limit. What could be different this time around is that you have Republican control of Congress and the White House. So, if you think that both parties are dedicated toward cutting spending, there could be a deal struck where the debt limit's only raised for a series of really significant financial reforms and fiscal reforms. So I think that's what conservatives will be arguing for. Remains to be seen if it actually happens.
If it actually happens, those are charged words, Rachel. We're looking at a Congress now that has had difficulty keeping the first promise, which was to repeal Obamacare, and now we're expecting them to do something about the debt. What's to keep them from using extraordinary measures to one more time just suspend it?
So extraordinary measures will only take them so far. They'll take them into the fall, but then the debt limit has to be dealt with. So they're not going to be able to get around it. The issue will be whether or not they raise it in exchange for financial and fiscal reforms. A lot of conservatives are saying, look, this has to be done. We have to raise the debt limit. We should get something for it, as opposed to just giving it to Democrats for free without getting something in return. So that's going to be the real question.
Okay, so the real question here now is, how do we really reduce the debt? Is it, I've heard some say, well, now that the economy is going gangbusters, we don't have to worry. We'll just produce more and the debt will go away. It was because of this downturn that we had during the Obama years, that now with Trump in charge and we're going full steam ahead, we don't have to really reduce the debt. We just need to let the economy catch up. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's clear that our debt is actually hampering what could be even more economic growth. We're almost at 90% debt to GDP ratio, and countries that get to that point, their economy starts stagnating. Their economy doesn't grow nearly as fast as it could. So to people that say, oh, our economy is doing fine, well, it's not, number one, but number two, it could be doing a lot better if we didn't have this huge debt. And the first step toward reforming that is, in the spending process in Congress. We just put out a big document on Tuesday from the Heritage Foundation recommending almost $1 trillion in spending that Congress could cut. That's where things really need to start if we're going to draw down this debt and do the hard work of getting our country back on the right financial track.
Well, we all know that the elephant in the room is entitlement spending, that's where most of our money goes, and those are the dear to our heart programs that nobody really wants to cut, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So talk to me about these cuts that you're suggesting, and is there a way to kind of mitigate the spending that really needs to be looked at in those entitlement programs?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Entitlements are where the bulk of that spending is. The proposals that we put out on Tuesday get on the discretionary side. So, duplicative programs or programs that aren't functional, getting at that sort of low-hanging fruit of the budget. But what you're talking about, entitlement reform, absolutely needs to happen if we're going to get control of the debt. That doesn't mean people won't get benefits. It just means making reforms to the system to make it more sustainable. Because right now, in addition to driving the debt, Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security are all going broke. So the reforms need to be made to ensure that people that paid into the program get what they, are due, but also so we're not sort of throwing good money after bad and driving the debt up in the process of, not having these programs not work as they're supposed to.
Well, there are a couple of things that have been introduced here recently. I know that Representative Mark Sanford from South Carolina has introduced the Debt Limit Control and Accountability Act, and then he also co-authored with Senator Mark Enzi of Wyoming, the Penny Plan. Could you talk about those two, and do they have a chance? Are they any good? Should we be supporting those some way? Should our listeners be calling in? Talk to us about this.
Yeah, both of those plans are designed to control the debt. The Penny Plan is the most interesting. It has support in both the House and the Senate, and essentially says you take a penny off the debt or of spending down, every certain period of time, and you are able to reduce the debt. I don't know if those plans right now have the support they need to pass, but they're very important, and it's important that they get support because it's saying, to Congress, the more sponsors that those bills have, hey, this is important, hey, the debt is important, we need to work on it. So those bills should get, co-sponsors, and I'm hopeful that a lot of members will support them, simply because to show that they're interested in addressing these policies.
Well, I hope you're right, too, and I'm glad that we discussed those a little bit because I know that our listeners are interested in writing letters that are meaningful, that support legislation that will actually pull back some of the problems that we've seen in the past few years. I have to tell you that I was not a real fan of Rex Tillerson when he was first appointed to Secretary of State, but now he's become my hero, and I want you to comment a little bit on what they're calling T-Rex's jab at the media. He's not, for years and years, the media has been allowed to ride in their planes and go on these trips with the Secretary of State, and he's saying, no way, not this time. Do you know about this? And is this really going to make a dent, or is what we're seeing is just a policy statement by the Secretary of State saying, I'm going to do my part and cut spending any way I can?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of that, and it's also the fact that he's a guy that I think really enjoys doing his work, one-on-one with people. He said he's an introvert. He likes reading memos by himself, and to be honest, it's the prerogative of the Secretary of State to allow the press to travel with him or not. There's no law saying the press has to travel with him or that the taxpayers have to pay for it, and Tillerson has expressed his preference by saying, look, I prefer to travel by myself. I'll take one reporter so that they can report back on what I'm doing, but that's it. Not only does it save money, but I think it probably keeps it a little peaceful on the plane.
Well, and I think it just sends such a positive message to the American people saying, we don't have to pay for all of these extra things. I think that this brings up questions about discretionary spending. And it talks to us a little bit about discretionary spending and how that just adds to the debt.
Yeah, discretionary spending, is spent on a lot of the programmatic side of Washington, D.C. So it is spent on, putting reporters on the planes or, funding for the EPA. All of that falls under discretionary spending. And you have all these tiny little programs that are duplicative or not achieving their purpose. And so that's really what we tried to address on Tuesday when we put out our Blueprint for Balance, which is that book of cuts. We really targeted those discretionary side spending, and said, Congress, look, these are easy ways to save money. Here are some recommendations. So your listeners can find those on heritage.org, our website. We put a link to them there.
Well, we're coming up on a break right now, Rachel, and we'd like you to stay through the break because my co-host, Anna Little, has lots of questions. Can you stay with us for a couple of minutes while we take a break?
Sure can.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We really do appreciate your time. And we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. We'll be right back after this message with yours truly, Sharon Angle, with my co-host, the one and only Anna Little, and with our special guest, Rachel Bavard from the Heritage Institute, talking about their latest article on how we can cut the debt.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the Internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We, the people, never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent." Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show with Sharon Engel and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or at 11 a.m., Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, RedStatesTalkRadio.com. Now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We are speaking this segment with Rachel Bovard, Director of Policy Services for the Heritage Foundation. She's been discussing the topic of the debt limit, which calls for Congress and Trump to fix the budget. Rachel, thank you so much for waiting through that break. We do appreciate your time.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I was listening to your interview with Sharon in the first half of the segment, and I've got a couple of questions. You know, you did touch on, I guess, steps 1 and step 2 in the process, one of which is identifying those projects and policies that are outdated and can be implemented perhaps with technology in a better way and therefore reduce spending there. You've talked about hopefully not having to raise the debt limit, but if you do have to do that, to do it with some concessions by tax and spend Democrats that might limit the need to do it in the future and perhaps bring us away from that. My question focuses on what might be a third level, maybe more long-term approach. Wouldn't stimulating the economy, and I do not mean government stimulation, I mean private sector stimulation, wouldn't that kind of economic growth not only increase revenue to kind of help this spending problem, but also get people off of entitlements and back into the workforce? Just a thought. What is your thought about that?
Yeah, I do think that that's a good point. You know, anytime the economy grows, you do see the debt reduce, and you drive more revenue, you drive more growth in that way. I think it's not it's not a silver bullet, right? You have to do it with reforms. You have to do it with entitlement reforms if you want to get people off some of those, programs, for instance, like food stamps. If you want people to get up and off them, we have to reform them with things like work requirements for able-bodied recipients and things like that. But what you're talking about is important. However, I just would say, as the debt continues to grow, the economy is going to stagnate. So we almost go into like a vicious cycle here, right? We want the economy to grow to get us out of debt, but it can't grow because we're in so much debt. So that's why, the two, cutting spending and reforming entitlements, are also a big part of that puzzle.
It was referenced in a prior segment with another guest that, we as Americans, we've felt this pinch for quite some time now. Many of us have already changed our spending patterns at home. And I think some of the frustration that drove the Republican majority in the House, the Senate, and now a Republican president in the White House is the frustration of the American worker, who is also a voter, having changed their spending patterns at home and not seeing government follow suit. And so I guess we probably need to put some more pressure on our representatives in this particular area, because I do think that it's where the money and the months meet. That's the rubber in the road when it comes to votes and politics. What are your thoughts about what we can do to hold our representatives accountable on this topic?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's my sense, being in Washington, that the Congress hasn't totally picked up on the forces that drove Donald Trump into office. They haven't quite realized, I think the shift that's taking place in the country with, Americans who are just fed up with the government being in their lives, the government acting irresponsibly, and then the taxpayers having to deal with the consequences. So, I think it's important for voters to convey that message, to their representatives when they see them, be it at town halls, letters they write, emails they send, phone calls. They have to know that these things are what people care about, because I think too often, members of Congress sort of get isolated from that, and they start to think, well, no one's really paying attention. Everybody, cares about something else, healthcare, war, whatever. No one's paying attention to these things like the debt ceiling or the budget or spending bills. But they need to know people are paying attention, and that's something that can be communicated by voters to their representatives.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to stand up and direct our representatives. I know that we are often vocal now in criticizing our representatives, but I think we forget that our representatives are living in the bubble while they're working in D.C., and they're obviously required to be down there quite a bit, and therefore can easily lose touch with what's going on back in the home district. And with technology as it is, smartphones in our hands, we've got to be in constant communication with our representatives who do have staff in both their district offices and down in D.C. whose job it is to funnel those communications in summary fashion to the representatives so that they know what the people are asking for. So I think you really have emphasized that we need to be communicating more. But so if we are able to identify those programs that are outdated or perhaps not implemented properly, and then we do the entitlement reform, hopefully in combination with some kind of getting government out of the way, some policy that will get government out of the way to allow private sector jobs to grow, how is it that we stop tax and spend electeds from getting away with running the debt up even after we've done those things? We have to have a policy that changes the ability for overspending to even occur in the first place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And a number of conservatives actually championed this several years ago. It was called the Cut, Cap, and Balance Plan. And conservatives in the Senate, like Mike Lee and Rand Paul, are really pushing that again. And essentially it puts restrictions on Congress, just like the ones you're talking about. It says, the budget has to be balanced. It caps spending, at an annual basis. And it makes significant cuts, and it gets us back on the road to balance in the budget, but also reduce the debt. And they've been pushing that plan as a means to do exactly what you suggest, which is to control, and put parameters around how much government can spend every year. So I'd urge your listeners to look that up. It's the Cut, Cap, Balance Plan, and if you like it, that's something that you can tell your congressman to support.
Yeah, cut, cap, and balance. I love those terms, and I think I do remember discussing that when it was being pushed in prior administration. So I guess we need to dust it off, and now would be the time, wouldn't it? Now we're talking about budget. We're talking about fiscal matters. Obamacare obviously has to be revisited, but we talked about tax reduction and tax reform as a promise that we wanted our president to keep, and obviously he needs legislative support in order to do that. So now must be the time, right, Rachel?
Now is the time. We've reached the debt limit where Congress is going to have to deal with it in the fall. But sooner than that, the government's set to run out of money at the end of April. So we'll have a discussion about spending then. So this is a very significant time in Washington. And if you have strong feelings about what the government should or shouldn't be spending, now's the time to make your voice heard.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rachel, because, I think it's a good segue when you start talking about spending and what the government should and shouldn't be able to spend. It's a good segue right into that tax reform, which talks about what we ought to be taking from the American people and what proportion we're taking from them in proportion to what they're earning at this point and cost of living and all of that, which is what I think the frustration of the working American, the forgotten man or forgotten woman, that's where the frustration is. We're not looking to live in the lap of luxury. We want to work hard. We want to earn money. We want to pay our bills, and we want to survive and have a life. But we're finding it harder and harder. And I think that a lot of the frustration that has driven the dynamics in politics is around this economic issue. So any final thoughts? Our segment is beginning to close. Gosh, time flies when we're having fun. So what would you, in summary, tell our listeners to do on this topic?
Well, I think this is a critical time. If they have feelings about, government spending, tax reform, the deficit, all of these issues are in play right now in Washington. I think Congress is just beginning to get the message that, people have really strong feelings about this stuff, and that's what drove Donald Trump to the White House. So I would urge them to get out, make calls, write letters. I mean, these are things that if they care about, they got to let their representatives know.
Thank you so much. This segment, listeners, we've been speaking with Rachel Bovard. She is the Director of Policy Services for the Heritage Foundation. Rachel, remind our listeners where they can follow you on this issue and on any other important issue that you're working on.
You can follow us on Twitter at Heritage on the Hill, and you can follow me on Twitter at Rachel_Bovard.
Thank you so much. And with that, listeners, we have got to go to another break. Time flies, and we're having fun here at Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .coms. I'm Anna Little, co-hosting today with the one and only Sharon Engel. Silent John Forsythe keeping us on air and on time on the boards in the studio. We'll all be right back after this break.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsythe, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Sharon Engel and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or at 11 a.m., Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, RedStateTalkRadio.com. And now you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Our next guest is with us, and the honor of the introduction is mine, Colin Hanna, president of Let Freedom Ring USA, Inc. He's a former county commissioner in Chester County, PA. He's been a guest on Hannity and Combs, The Situation with Tucker Carlson, Dayside, Fox and Friends, Your World with Neil Cavuto, The Big Story with John Gibson, Special Report with Britt Hume, and the Lou Dobbs Report. We are honored to have Colin with us today. Colin, welcome back to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Well, it's a delight to be with you, two of my favorite women in the conservative movement.
Well, thanks for that, Colin. Well, we're excited about your article, which I know we can find at Let Freedom Ring's website. It's entitled China Stonewalls U.S. Steals Cyber Theft Lawsuit. Tell us about your article, please.
Well, sure, and you can indeed find it. It was originally published in Investors Business Daily. And what it details is something that the average American doesn't know about, but once informed, I think, is going to become outraged by. And that is a case of hacking, not by the Chinese government to the U.S. government. That kind of hacking goes on all the time. Each government tries to get into the other government's computer systems, and there are all kinds of reports about the number of DNS attempts apparently made by the Chinese government on the Department of Defense websites. We're not talking about that. This is a case where the Chinese government, or something very closely associated with the government, which is one of those separate entities that is government funded but isn't technically within the government. You know, in China, it's not easy to determine where the government starts and ends because of their kind of universal dictatorial control, very much unlike our system. And they hacked into the computer systems of U.S. Steel Corporation. Now, I'm making the claim, so I want to make it clear, we're making the claim that this hacking occurred. And in the process, they stole the intellectual property of U.S. Steel for some of the most advanced, high-strength, low-weight, thin steel that is used in aerospace, in missile technology, in all aspects of our defense establishment. This is stuff that was developed at the cost of millions and millions of dollars of R&D. It is highly prized. It is not government per se. It is the private sector, and here's the Chinese government stealing those secrets and then ripping off copies of this high-end technology so that they can undercut U.S. Steel in selling this highly desirable, very high-tech steel around the world. That's something that ought to really tick off Americans. When you talk about Chinese stealing intellectual property, so often they're talking about things like fashion items where they make rip-off copies of handbags and shoes and things like that, or watches where they steal a watch design. Those things are relatively minor. They're obviously not to the people who own the patents and the trademarks on them, but they are not existential. This is the national security system of the United States and the financial viability of one of the biggest sources of steel in the world, and certainly in the U.S. And for the Chinese government to get involved in this is absolutely outrageous.
Now, China has been identified by this president in a number of speeches as an unfair or a person in the global market that does not follow trade rules, that very routinely breaks trade rules. And so I guess what we the people need to look for is what are the consequences. I mean, you're now not dealing domestically, so the U.S. court system is a difficult place to fight these battles. For the benefit of our listeners, what do you do when you have an international trade partner like this that just consistently breaks rules? How do you make them
Well, there are a couple of
accountable?
different things. First of all, we're dealing with the theft of intellectual property. That's one thing.
Right.
Another thing that the Chinese are doing with this steel is they are taking end runs around tariff rules by shipping the steel to a country where the tariffs are lower, like Vietnam, and not really doing anything to the steel there, but then pretending that that's where the origin is. So there's a couple of different levels of trade violations. And there's something called the International Trade Court, and that's where U.S. Steel was actually trying to set a new precedent on cyber theft. And a fairly elaborate and detailed case was constructed. The Chinese were blocking it at every step. This is a process that is done in the English language, and in an English language court proceedings, when U.S. Steel demanded the production of documents from the Chinese, they produced them in Mandarin. So that the people, the court could not even interpret what was going on. U.S. Steel then temporarily, I think, dropped the suit. I'm not employed in any way by U.S. Steel. I'm not a spokesperson for them. I'm just simply someone who is a free market advocate who is absolutely outraged at this kind of violation of the very essence of innovation. When American companies innovate high-tech solutions and then the Chinese come along and steal them, that's something that ought to get the backup of every freedom-loving American.
And, Colin, I think you've hit it on the head. You're a free trade advocate. So, Sharon, so am I. I think many of our listeners would espouse free trade principles as a policy they want to see brought forward. But how is free trade possible if you have rule breakers who participate in that system and the accountability is lost? And it appears that that's what's happened here via this trade court exercise with U.S. Steel. They ended up dropping the suit temporarily, documents were improperly produced in a language that was not permissible in that court, and yet where are the consequences? So is there something we can do to help with that?
Well, first of all, encourage your listeners to go to our website, letfreedomringusa.com, and you can read a couple of different articles on this, and then go to your member of Congress and your 2 senators and try to educate them on a particular type of trade violation that they're probably unaware of. Because the more awareness that can be generated about this, the more people will be upset to see what's happening and then put legal pressure and diplomatic pressure on the Chinese to use the powers of their government to stamp it out because it's so embarrassing to them on the world scene. That's the only way we can do it. The U.S. Steel can certainly revive their case and perhaps retailor it so that it's more robust and less likely to fail. That might have been one of the reasons why the suit was pulled, because the absence of some of the proof that they were seeking may have weakened their case, so they then have to go and go through the process of getting that data now and going back to the court. But this is something that ought to really terrify our American citizenry when things that are essential to our national defense are subject to hacking by a foreign government.
Well, Colin, I'm not finished with you yet, but we've got to take a quick station identification break. Can you hold on for 2 minutes? Because I want Sharon to ask you her questions when we come back. Is that all right?
I sure can. You bet, Anna. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so very much. We are speaking this segment with Colin Hanna from Let's Freedom Ring USA, Inc., and we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia and around the world on the Internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .coms. I'm Anna Little, co-hosting today with Sharon Engel, and we'll be right back with you speaking with Colin Hanna after this break.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the Internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty Health Share. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We, the people, never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners, to Conservative Commando's radio show. You are listening to our show broadcast live from WNJC 1360, our flagship in Philadelphia. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. Or at 11 a.m., you can log on to Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight log on to redstatetalkradio.com. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999 1199. We're talking with our special guest this segment, Colin Hanna of Let Liberty Ring. And we've been talking about cyber theft and how the Chinese are not really accountable for the things that they do, and how we as a nation are really suffering. Colin, thank you so much for holding through the break. We really do appreciate your time here at Conservative Commandos Radio Show. And I wanted to pick up on this thread about how Americans are suffering from this kind of cyber theft. Talk really specifically about jobs and how that comes right down to you and your neighbor here when the Chinese go after the secrets of U.S. Steel.
Oh, absolutely, because take the aircraft industry, for instance, which is such an important part of our defense establishment. It employs tens of thousands of people, maybe more, hundreds of thousands of people. Defense contractors are also commercial aviation contractors. Take a look at Boeing. They are able to sell both commercial aviation and defense planes like the F-18 and so on, which is a Boeing product, in part because of the dual activity, the dual income streams of both defense and commercial aviation. And when you're looking at American balance of payments overseas, the single largest contributor to a positive balance of payments with other nations is, in fact, our aircraft industry. Well, the aircraft industry needs this kind of high-tech, high-strength, low-weight, thin steel that has been developed at great expense by companies like U.S. Steel. And if they are undercut by people who steal the technology that enables them to make this kind of high-quality steel, then you begin to erode the financial underpinnings of our defense establishment and our positive balance of payments through aircraft sales. So these things are tightly interwoven in our economy. And for a government to go in and basically weaken a defense contractor, that's a different kind of assault on American values than merely a Chinese rip-off artist copying a trademark or a piece of fashion accessory or a watch or something like that. This is fundamental stuff, and it has to do with our national security, and you're so right to point out the employment, the jobs component of it. It's absolutely huge, and when we have the Chinese premier spending time with President Trump at the lovely Mar-a-Lago, this is the kind of thing that ought to be brought up in that kind of setting, because the Chinese government can shut this down.
Well, I wanted to point out that in your article, you said that more than 15,000 layoffs in January of 2015, and most of those job losses were throughout that supply chain of the steel-producing community. So it's not just in Boeing or the aircraft industry, it's all the way up the line with steel production. And the other thing that I wanted you to address was this idea that you said in 2000, China produced approximately 14% of the world's steel, and that was just slightly more than the U.S. production of 11%. But by 2015, China was producing 49% of the steel. So it's a huge thing that they've done in stealing this technology. They have stolen the market away from U.S. Steel in a way that cannot really be recuperated, or can it? I guess that's what I really want you to address, is what can we the people do, besides telling our congressmen and our senators about this awful problem? How can we tell if a product is made in the USA?
Well, frankly, you and I can't, but there are ways to determine the origin of steel. There are two different factors here. One is what you might call commodity steel, and that's just sort of basic steel that is used in buildings, I-frames, and things like that. And the Chinese, because they have lower costs of production, they sometimes have government subsidies in order to drive costs down so that they can get share of market from other worldwide steel producers. That's one thing that's very hard to stop, because that's market forces at work on a global basis. What we're talking about here is the very specialized, high-end, genuinely proprietary steel that is the high-tech, kind of cutting-edge and most profitable part of the steel industry. And it's there that the Chinese are breaking every possible law, trade regulation, and sort of ethical framework. And that's what we're focused on with this particular issue. The commodity steel problem is a real problem. It's got a huge employment impact, but there's not much that can be done about that other than making sure that trade agreements and tariffs and so on, if they are in place, are enforced. But in the high-end, high-tech, very profitable steel that is used in aircraft and missile technology, things of that nature, there is something that can be done, and we want to enforce international regulations on the theft, the cyber theft of proprietary information, patents, processes that are legitimately protected as intellectual property. And that's where I want people's awareness to be focused on this. The commodity steel issue is to be left, frankly, to another day and people who are just reviewing all of our international trade agreements. And certainly President Trump has advanced that whole issue like no one else that we've seen recently. So he may be able to help the employment situation on commodity steel. But on this high-tech stuff that involves really expensive R&D, that's where we need to enforce it from a legal standpoint, and the theft of intellectual property should not be tolerated.
Well, with that, we're going to have to wrap up. Colin, can you tell our friends and listeners how they can get a hold of you and read more about this?
They certainly can. At LetFreedomRingUSA.com, they can sign up for emails. Costs nothing. They can be. The name of our organization is Let Freedom Ring, so we use a bit of a pun for people who want to join our email list and become members of Let Freedom Ring. We call them ringers, so you can sign up to become a ringer at no cost and receive regular information updates. So thank you so much for asking.
Give us that website one more time.
LetFreedomRingUSA.com.
Thank you so much, Colin Hannon, for being our guest. So sorry to go, but here we are, Anna, right at the end of the show one more time.
Great.
Yes, and time flies when we're having fun here at Conservative Commando's radio show. We need to thank our guests today, Frank Vernuccio of the Vernuccio-Novak Report, Rachel Bovard from the Heritage Foundation, and last but not least, Colin Hanna of Let Freedom Ring USA. And we are out of time. Sharon, final thoughts for the listeners before we go.
I think we've just got to say it. We're out of time.
Okay.
We got to run. We got to go. We'll see you next week on the radio.
1360 AM. WNJC. Washington Township, Philadelphia.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.